To this week's episode of Club Thrive the podcast with me, Kate Sterling, and a very special guest today. I'm so excited to have Shilpa Jameson on the podcast this week. Shilpa is the founder of Mindset, Mimi and Me, with a mission of empowering kids with self-worth by igniting their imagination. Shilpa's own journey through self-discovery, personal development and building self-esteem, confidence and clarity in her life direction through working with her own coach before becoming one herself is the absolute reason behind Mindset Mimi. Oh my God, I'm going to start this again. I'm so sorry. I've never done that before. Never hashed up an introduction. We'll just start again. Let me start again. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Club Thrive the podcast with me, Kate Sterling, and an incredibly special guest. This week I am joined by Shilpa Jameson. Shilpa is the founder of Mindset, Mimi and Me, with a mission of empowering kids with self-worth by igniting their imagination. Shilpa's own journey through self-discovery, personal development and building self-esteem, confidence and clarity in her own life direction through working with her own coach before becoming one herself is the absolute reason behind why she set up Mindset, Mimi and Me. She felt a huge responsibility to help her daughters when she became a mum herself navigate the world, but didn't know where to start. So it was when she became a mum to two beautiful girls that everything shifted for her. She felt a huge responsibility and just didn't know what to do about it. However, it was through her children's own creativity and her own ingenuity that connected her back into her love of art and poetry. And I absolutely love this story behind Shilpa's business and the mission behind it. And it's why these incredibly personal moments are just so wonderful in this entrepreneurial journey as well of evolution. But one day, by chance, her daughter bought her some cheap, unopened oil paints. At this point, she had not used oil paints, her beloved medium, since she was 16, and it opened a whole new world of possibility for her. She thought, why not combine her passion for self-development with art and poetry to teach kids self-worth, trust, and awareness from birth? This was the stuff that she needed to know when she was little, and Mindset, Mimi and Me was born. Shilpa has gone on to be a leader in the parenting space with this, let's face it, slightly left field approach to parenting. This sounds like it's much more about the creativity and the natural unique ability that we have as humans to cultivate confidence, self-belief and well-being, not only in our children, but also in ourselves. And I'm so excited to have Shilpa with us today. I can't wait to dig into this conversation. Shilpa, welcome. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Kate. It's slightly surreal because I'm used to listening to your voice in a podcast. So I feel like I've entered your podcast well. So I'm very pleased to be here. You know, I'm a big fan of your podcasts.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. And I think, you know, even as I was just thinking then, you know, I'm just going to own it, slightly stumbling over that introduction today as a result of, I was saying to Shilpa before we started recording, a slightly frazzled morning with my daughter who was displaying these big emotions, having had a night of no sleep. We all woke up on a bit of a bumpy foot, well I certainly did, and this navigation of emotion and this navigation of how we handle that alongside nurturing our children, alongside nurturing our own well-being. And Shilpa, I love the honesty about your story, because I think sometimes, I don't know if you found this, but I find that we can get very worried about, you know, having a business or having an approach that is right or that is good or that fits the molds of what other people are doing in the parenting space. And I feel like what you're doing is actually incredibly unique. And I really am excited by that and grateful for you to come on today, because I think there is so much more that we can tap into in relation to the natural, organic human qualities that we have, that we can harness for the best of not only our children, but for ourselves too. Have you found that this whole journey of your own evolution has been supported by the children? Like, it's come to this point because of having children, because of becoming a mother?
Yeah, 100%. So I think that I trained as a coach before I had kids, a couple of years before. And I've said this before, there was something in me that was just, even though I really love the process and I love self-development, there was something in me was just, it's not one-to-one coaching that I just want to do. So I was doing it on the side of my corporate the job, but didn't go all in on it. And then but was always reading around self-development. I was a bit confused, to be honest. I was just like, I love this self-development stuff. Why don't I just go and be a coach like everyone else? And then it was that story you refer to. So over lockdown, I was at home with two kids who I think about 5 and 3 at the time, and I was thinking, well, how do I teach them all this stuff that I've learned? I couldn't really find those materials, kind of find the materials to help me teach things like, about managing emotions or thought awareness, how do you change your beliefs. So that's how the idea for the business came about. It's like, oh, actually, maybe I can bring this stuff together with the creativity and teach kids. But it just wouldn't have happened without that, I guess, catalyst of having kids.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's interesting because before we started recording, I was asking you, or we were kind of exploring this concept around the freedom that actually having your own business alongside parenting gives you. And this sense that, I was saying that I was self-employed before I became a parent, and it's almost been harder because I've had that, well, everything in parenting is hard, but I've had that taste of total freedom of my life. Yeah. And it was almost like becoming a parent actually made me feel like I was in a box. Like, it's actually been one of my hardest things to overcome, is this sense of feeling trapped, even though I have more freedom than what many people do, or many parents do, and many mums do, whether they're a stay-at-home mum or whether they also are balancing a corporate career or any job, whatever the kind of industry is. Have you found that running your business has given you more freedom, or is it that there's elements of it that was just totally out of necessity with the balance of life?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely feel I have more freedom, but let's come back to that. So I guess my background is I was in corporate, and then went part-time. So the first couple of years working in the business, I was doing it whilst working part-time in my spare time. And then I went full-time only at the start of last year. So I definitely loved having more time to spend on the business, definitely gave me the flexibility to handle those pick up, drop offs. My kids actually changed school mid-year, so it really gave me the flexibility to do that. So that is amazing. But I think we've spoken about this, Kate, haven't we? We are the first generation doing this, of navigating business and kids and family, and there's such a beauty in that freedom, but there's also a responsibility and choice, and that can be really overwhelming. And I think, the summer holidays are a really great example of that, of, do you just shut the door to your business and full-time parent? Do you try and balance both? Do you get childcare and you work to keep the business going? And all of those decisions are right, depending on the person. But I think the bit that I'm not good at, and I think you struggle with this as well, it's the consequence of choice, isn't it? And being at peace of like, okay, I am going to do less work, but I'm at peace with that. And I think that's the bit I'm trying to get better at, of like, because I was traveling as a family, which was amazing over the summer, but that piece of like, okay, that means the marketing isn't going to get done, and having to be at peace with that. And I'm at 10 to 20, so I'm about 80 to 90% peace with that, but never quite. I still want it all the time.
I can hard relate to this, and I think this is something that I'm getting increasingly intrigued by the more I also I think shift into this parenthood identity and mum identity, and perhaps where we have tried to control certain things in becoming a mum, and this link to high performance and high achiever, and it's so ingrained in our makeup and our identity. It's like a hunger. And is it an addiction? What is the line, and how is it part of our coping mechanism as well? And do you see that with the families and the children that you work with? Can you see these character traits being built almost as a response to the world in which we live? Or is it more from a sense of children or parents are born with that energy or that kind of drive and that hunger?
Yeah, I think that, as a mindset coach, you'll know this, isn't it? Like, that hunger to achieve, make a difference, make your mark, can come from a really negative place, and it can come from an amazingly positive place. So it can come from a really negative place of I'm not enough, I need to prove my worth. And it can come at one extreme, and so you're kind of just going for blind ambition, and it's almost like, that classic, you get there and then you think, oh, this isn't what I wanted. And it can come from that place of, I have this mission and I really want to make a difference, and you've just got that endless energy to do that. And I would say part of my journey is definitely shifting from one side to the other, and I guess that's part of developing, that journey of life. And it's also really just what part of my mission is how do you give kids a healthy sense of self-worth, and also how do you not get them, but how do you help them understand themselves and their strengths and what they care about. So to get that, almost to kind of help them define success from the start, so they're operating from a really healthy place from the start. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think this concept of success, as you were talking then, I was thinking about, you've said before that you've set something up here that you wish you had as a child, which suggests to me that perhaps as a kid you weren't maybe as confident as what you are now. Or is it that more that actually it's a sense of belonging in the world that you perhaps felt you didn't have as a child? Or was it that you were kind of trying to fit into a box, perhaps? We often talk about our upbringing and the impact that it has on who we become, and the world and school and all these kind of things that we have kind of little control over as children. Is it that as a kid, do you think that your creativity was something that you had but didn't know how to harness yourself, for example?
Yeah, so there's kind of, I think, two key narratives going on as a child. And overall I had a really kind of stable, pretty kind of happy upbringing, but I was very underconfident and shy, and that is only something I really broke down and understood through finding a coach in my 30s. And so that was when I understood the impact of trapped emotions mindset, and that understanding I got in my 30s obviously really drives my business, and why I think that, as I say, kids don't need to wait till they're 30 to learn this stuff. We can break it down and teach them. So that is my kind of skill set, and I say genius of making that stuff really, mindset, thoughts, emotions, really fun and accessible for kids and parents. But then the other thing that was going on is that my parents are first generation Swiss family, so it was a really kind of classical sort of immigrant story in terms of my parents. It was about education first, go to university, get a good job, stop doing your art homework type thing. Creativity just wasn't valued or seen as something that could lead to anything. So although I was very creative, it was kind of more and more watered down to, like, even at A level, was like, oh well, I won't do art A level because that's just going to waste too much time. So, and when I went to university, it was like, okay, I'm a grown up now. There's no time for art, or there's no benefit to art. So it just got less and less of that creativity. And I just had that imprint of go to university, get a good job. And there were lots of benefits from that. And, I studied biology, which feeds into my work now. But it was just a very different upbringing to what I hope to give my kids, of like, what do you care about, what are you passionate about, and how can you bring that into your life?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, because I appreciate it was suddenly a bit of a personal question, and I think it's always, there's always a line. But I find it fascinating how, this is a definite thread. You mentioned with your work there is a thread that pulls all of these things together. It is absolutely fascinating to me the number of individuals and mums who set up businesses having become a mum, who actually have always had this creative entrepreneurial streak, who have always had this kind of part of them that has been there, that has been, a part of life, but hasn't always had the fresh air or hasn't always had the nurturing. And what would you say to someone who perhaps was in the position that you were in in corporate, having had your children, I mean, obviously the pandemic, I was working with people still who I think are still processing the pandemic recently, where it's like they still talk about that time. It still has an impact on them because of the shifts and the load that had to be carried during that time. So, you know, but that's a curveball that will come in other ways in life, and maybe in different variations. But what would you say to someone who was in this position of just feeling like, did you have that, was there a feeling during the, you know, during this time where you're like, do I go and set up by myself? Was it like a feeling of frustration? Was it a feeling of wanting more? Was it that actually the paints and your daughter bringing that home really was like the straw that broke the camel's back as part of a bigger process of thinking? Or was it that that just came in and like blew your mind?
No, I was. So I think I've always really wanted to make an impact, and so I went into public service. So that gave me that sense of making an impact for the first half of my career. But even at kind of around the age of 30, I guess when I started getting coaching, I was sort of frustrated. I was just, it wasn't enough for me. And I think that creative and emotional side was starting to come out. So after coaching, I reached out to coach on a whim and just loved it. And it kind of really brought that psychology, my love of psychology that had also been there, but I sort of suppressed. So I then trained as a coach. So it was always there, and even in the corporate side, I was always going into, I'd always be the person, I kind of specialised basically in going in, starting new projects, new teams. So it was a very kind of entrepreneurial take on corporate. I hated just doing business as usual jobs. There was always an element of change or newness. So though I'd known for a while that I would start something, but it was just what it was. So that's when that came over lockdown and started to emerge over lockdown.
That's amazing. Do you think, I mean, it's hard to know because we don't know what we don't know, but was there anything about the shift of lifestyle in lockdown? So often in lockdown, we talk about, you know, oh, we weren't able to go out so much, or we had to be creative at home to not be bored, or, you know, with young children as well, like,
Yeah.
you know, that's hard. You know, that's really hard when you're also exhausted and balancing lots of things. Like, I've definitely been that parent that's like, well, I won't use TV. And then I'm like, oh, God, do you want to watch CBeebies? Like, I literally find myself asking if Sienna wants to watch it because I almost need to, like, space out. Do you think that, I mean, who knows, but like, do you think that there was an element of actually having to sit with these feelings and, you know, just reference depression, like a very hard moment of life to come out of, like, it's a very conscious choice to make a change that requires taking a risk and courage but really often sometimes sitting with how we're truly feeling. Do you ever wonder if actually lockdown helped to speed up or to bring to the forefront something that might never have happened had we not had it? Impossible question. Just wondering your thoughts.
Yeah. No, that's such a good question. I mean, it was definitely really transformative for me for a lot of reasons, and I don't think I'm alone. So, you know, my experience, I was on the whole incredibly lucky because we had a nanny at the time who was really local, so she continued to look after the kids. So me and my husband were able to work during the day, and yeah, and then, you know, it was the same that everyone's experiencing at home. It's a lot, but for me, I think there was lots of transformation I experienced. I was in an incredibly stressful job that was really, really busy, 9:30 to 5:30, but that not commuting, obviously just slowing down, everyone's slowing down. I realised how overstimulated I was just by office life and the commute, and how, I mean, just generally knackered I was. Like, now I look back and think, how was I commuting to London 4 days a week and doing a lot of nursery drop-off and pick-up? So that stillness really helped me, and obviously gave me time to create because we weren't going out. So I was actually painting a lot. So that was lovely. And so I think I had that time, that creativity, that business percolated. I was having I had coaching at the time, so that was when she helped me realise that actually I've really been suppressing that creativity, so that was really helpful. And I think the big thing for me was, I just had the space to, like, things just hit crisis point in that job. It was just too much, even working at part time. So it was quite a long process, but over a year I found a new job that was part time in a job share, so that actually allowed me to then spend more time in the business. So it was a real catalyst for change for me. I think you're right. I never thought what would have happened if I hadn't done that. That's a scary thought, but not that I wish lockdown on us again. But I think it's that stillness and reflection really was really helpful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think it really highlights this value of our time and our space and the creativity or the things that come up when we're actually not rushing and we're not overstimulated, which is hard, of course, when we're also surviving, where it's like you do get, like you say, you know, you look back now and you're like, how on earth did I do that? And, you know, I was the same last year when I was doing my partner was working a lot of evenings and weekends and like long days. So I was trying to build things into a sustainable model, and then like with work, and then I'd be doing evenings and the weekends. And now I'm like, no wonder I burnt out in January, for one, but also how on earth, I said this to my mum the other day, I was like, how on earth did I do it? And we were like, well, you just do, don't you? Just cope. And I think there's this balance of survival and thriving, that there can be this, you'll know this from your science knowledge better than mine, I'm sure, but like that explosion of cells and the energy, like it's an actual very physical thing that happens physiologically when we decide to make a change. Because sometimes I think, you know, a lot of listeners and people that I've worked with, women that I've worked with, don't feel like they have the energy to make the change. So actually the thought of making the change is so exhausting. But it's like, on the other side of the motivation of thinking about an alternative life is a physical chemical reaction that we can experience in the body. And is there, you know, how would you best like approach this with someone who, from your work side of things, who is exhausted, who is surviving, who is, you know, maybe on the brink of depression without even realizing it, because mood is so low, energy is so low, but we just cope and we survive and we live in that state, and that's what we know. So it's almost like you don't even know what the options are on the other side, because you're just so used to living in this state. What do you say to someone when they come to you and you notice these things?
Yeah, so I mean, I think people to me or would come to me in that situation if they're aware the parenting's contributing to that. So I think, you know, because we both know as coaches, lots of things could be contributing to that. It could be like a badly fitting job. It's not just being a parent. There's something deeper going on as well. So I think people would come to me, or do come to me, because there's something in the parenting dynamic or the family dynamic that's exhausting them and not quite working. So for a lot of people, it's just, they just haven't found that kind of ease or peace and alignment in how they interact with their kids. So their kids' emotions are just draining them. It's that constant roller coaster of, you know, you react, your kid reacts, or your kid reacts, and then your emotions spike, and so you're in this constant drama. So that's what I think I help people get out of, and then I help them. So I have a method called the aligned parenting method. So I help them look holistically at everything. So looking at their values, and because actually that's the thing that guides our decisions and how we want to, or should guide how we want to live our family life and our decisions and what we want for our kids. And when we look at that, take the time to look at that, there's much more ease. And then I help them look at their mindset, their emotional triggers, and their kids' emotions and how they support them. And then lastly, you know, what they want for their kids, what skills they want for their kids. And so through that process, I help them find more ease. And I was just hearing from a client this morning that, you know, she just had such a such a more joyful and easeful summer. She'd been really not looking forward to it. And then we worked together just before summer, and actually she just, you know, even though it was tiring, she just actually really enjoyed it. The kids really enjoyed it, and she's coming back to September to work really energized, and that is what kind of lights my heart, because it's not, the thing is, I started this work thinking, oh, it's just about making the relationship between your kids and you better, and obviously that greater connection and joy is amazing, but when you get that, it just floods into the rest of your life, because actually then you're not constantly just thinking about parenting or in survival mode with parenting. You've got the energy for your work, you've got the energy for your friends, so it kind of flows into everything. And I can't remember your question, but I hope
no, but that was amazing, because no, thank you so much, because I think you're right. Like, basically, it's all linked, isn't it? So you might have someone.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I was wondering, do people mainly come to you because there is conflict in the house? Like, there is a sense of we can't manage our children's emotions, like we don't know how to deal with them, or is it more that the parents also, I guess it's probably both, like struggling with their emotions and the judgment of their reactions? There's kind of two things at play, isn't there? And there could be a lot of shame that comes into this, a lot of self-judgment of, oh God, I'm a different parent to the one I thought I was going to be. And then it kind of, and then we get frustrated, or there's that stress around, well, I need to work because I need the money. And then that comes out at our children almost. And it can become this sense of, oh, I don't want to be angry at my child because I love my child. And now I'm confused because I thought I wanted children, but now I'm like frustrated at them all the time. Do you find that actually it unravels, that people come for this sense of there was this, this build up of perhaps it is emotional distress in the house, but actually there are many, 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 as you've just said, things that come into play? And is it specifically around behavioural challenges that parents are having, or is it that parents are worried about children's anxiety? What is it? Is there like a singular thing that you find people come to you particularly for as a start point, or is it quite varied?
I think it's quite varied, and my two main services, and so this is answering your question, are the parent coaching, either as individuals or couples, but also my community, Mindset and Us. So on that, I host my books that teach kids about these skills, and also do fortnightly Q&A calls and masterclasses. So I think the parents that come to that, I think, it's the two camps, kind of that sort of emotional, trying to step off that emotional roller coaster, but also like, well, actually, I just want to build these skills in how do I build these skills in my kids, or my kids are a bit nervous and anxious, so how do I just get that light touch support? And then the parents that come for more in-depth coaching, I think that generally it's kind of that emotional overload is just overtaking things. They want to kind of get more of that ease and joy back. But what I would say is that, and you were talking about it's the kids or it's you, and kind of it's that back and forth. It's 100% that. So I'm really more and more positioning myself, or I think I was always doing this, but I'm kind of, it's coming out in my communication and branding more. I feel like I'm one of the few places where I help you build a relationship together. So really parenting is start, and it's constant feedback. It's just constant feedback. When you get down, your kids get down, and you feel them and they're up and down. So it's really about how do I help families with relationships with parents or
I love that, the building of strength together and it being a dance. There's something so poetic about it and creative, which is very on brand, but also just so true. Yeah. And I think this like real invitation for, again, this humanity and this part of us as humans to come out in the midst, like this empowerment that you give parents and the children to trust themselves, to kind of say, there is no one way of doing it. How is it going to best support you as a parent and your connection with your children, so that there is space for both parties to also be independent, which is wonderful, because then you're kind of cultivating this sense of independence, but also camaraderie and teammanship, which is just, I feel like that's a real sweet spot of how to survive life.
Yeah, and I love you've identified that, because I was literally writing some copy the other day. It's why my method's called the aligned parenting method, because it's helping you align to your values and what you want your kids. So I don't want to be here to be like gentle parenting is the way, or authoritative parenting, or conscious parenting, and this is how you discipline your child, or your child shouldn't go to after school clubs, or you should. It's I My pillars are self-worth, self-trust, self-knowledge. So only you know what's right for your family, but I'm just here to create that space to say, just take the time and I'll help you, kind of give you the space and some additional tools you might not have thought of to think about what are your values, what rhythms suit you. Are you the sort of family that wants to be doing something from 9 o'clock on a Saturday to 6 o'clock on a Sunday, or do you need that white space? What are the values? What are the rhythms? And what are the skills? What do you want for your kids, and what do you want for yourself? And how can you? Here are some tools to help you kind of bring that vision to life.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think, as again you were talking, it's this balance of kind of organization and management, but also space for freedom and space for that real organic kind of living in the moment. Because I think sometimes we can try, with parenting, there's so much around time and controlling time and managing. It's like the scheduling and the knowing where everyone is, because you can't just say yes to stuff because you need to check if someone's going to be there to look after the children, and it's almost like the children become this kind of commodity to balance, rather than this essence of like just tiny versions of us that are, or their own unique versions of themselves. How do you balance that? This, you don't have to share anything you don't want to share, but like within your own family dynamic, have you found a way that has worked really well for you to balance this whole organization, all piece of life in parenting and running a business yourself?
That's a $64 million question.
Recording this to sell on a PDF after.
Exactly. My program is going to sell. So I think it's definitely a journey, but I'd say there's definitely things I've implemented that I am so much better at it than I was, in the corporate world, where I did feel like I was constantly in survival. So I think some of the things that work for me are managing my energy. So there's this quote that really changed the way I parent, and I posted about this, of, do your eyes light up when they bloom? So if I don't have enough energy from day at work left, I know that I can have a really present conversation with my kids and be joyful with them. I'm not saying for 3 hours or even, but for 10 minutes, half an hour. That means I've done too much work, or I haven't had enough of a break before I see them. So I think that has really changed the way that I work, because I've had to, for me, it's like, do I have the kind of success factor is, do I have enough energy for them in the evening? Not, have I got everything done today? Because I most of the time haven't. So I think that's one thing that's worked for me. I think lockdown taught me just how much space I do need, and so not over programming our calendars, which again, I look back at my calendar pre-lockdown, I was like, how are we out every weekend? Like, that just doesn't happen anymore. So I'm really conscious of my energy at the weekend. At weekends, like, we wouldn't be out or seeing people or traveling every weekend in a row. There'd be a weekend where we're just not doing anything, or a day per weekend where we're just not doing anything. So I think, those are a couple of things that kind of really work for me. And I think it's that thing about kids is, again, one of the things I say is, the paradox is we are trying to teach them these stuff, but they are able to teach us as well. Everyone wants to know that they are able to enjoy reminding, keep reminding myself they take that every day.
I think it's almost like having the energy to be open to that as well, because I don't know if you found this, but I've definitely found when those energy tanks are drained, it's almost like even having fun and joy is exhausting. But it's kind of like this sense of, if you have, it's almost like the foot on the car pedals, isn't it? Or the brakes on a bike. Like if you have enough of the kind of the energy behind what you're doing and how you're living, then there is space for play, because we're not so stressed about doing all the time. There is this sense that actually that quiet space, that white space, is as valuable as the back-to-back calendar, that might make us feel good because we grew up thinking that productivity and being full and overloaded and just exhausted is normal. And it's almost like we have to invite in this alternative reality where we can have fun with parenting, where we can have energy and joy and space for creativity just for the enjoyment of it. And that sense of presence, like you say, I find it ironic how we almost need energy, or we need to feel fulfilled to have that presence with our children. Do you find that? Like, on the days where you've had like a really great day, where you go home to see your kids and you're like, this is just what I always imagined parenting to be like?
Yeah, I think also what you're getting at is I think we think those moments are really Instagrammable and are about the kind of perfect party with theme plates, or the matching Christmas pajamas, and that's the perfect parenting. But I think when you really think about your parenting, those kind of perfect moments are when you're like lying in bed together and they won't go to sleep, but they're telling you a really funny story, or like you're in the car and they say something that just like takes you completely by surprise, or you're just having a conversation at the dinner table. Like those are the moments of parenting that your kids care about, and actually like when they just make you laugh and you kind of forget about everything and you're just laughing with them, because kids, they do make you laugh. They're amazing. And I think we have to get better at kind of realizing that those are the moments that matter and that our kids are remembering. And it's not about, did I bake cookies with them every day over the summer holidays.
I think this is such a pertinent reminder, because I've definitely found myself in moments where I'm like, I'm having a great time. This probably looks great. I'll take a photo for content. And I think there's probably many moments over the last couple of years since becoming a parent where that has happened, because also of being self-employed. And I think there's this distinction where those worlds collide. And so thank you for that reminder, because I've definitely found, since making a conscious choice to be more intentional perhaps with social media, or to not have my child on social media so much, or to kind of enjoy those moments, like you say, without having to prove that they're there. Like, we will remember them as parents ourselves, and that deeper connection then gives us so much more energy and appreciation back for our children. How do you find this juggle of social media, selling yourself, putting yourself out there, alongside the juggle of parenting?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I'm just not as good at it as you, Kate.
I'm prolific, and it's probably, I said to someone this morning, I should probably just get a therapist, because I think my creativity ramps up when I'm like, my brain is really busy. So if I've always said this, if I'm ever on Instagram all the time, it's like she's creatively expressing here to deal with something. I'm not sure it's a good thing, is what I'm saying.
Definitely. So I'm like, I probably a bit of a balance. So I got overwhelmed by Instagram, so I just stopped posting. I mean, I post every now and again, but I haven't kind of mastered that. I need to kind of have a strategy and get back on it. So I use kind of LinkedIn in my newsletter more. But I think that, I mean, I think it goes back to that start of the conversation around that balance of family life and the business, and you're always making a choice. So I don't do as much social media as I would like, mainly because I just get overwhelmed by it, and I'm quite introverted anyway. So, but I'm not at peace with that. that makes sense. But it does mean I've kind of, I guess, got greater energy protection around my home life. But yeah, I'd like to shift the balance a bit more. So I think, yeah, I think it just goes back to that choice. Is I feel like that's how I manage it, by not doing it, shutting it out. So that's not necessarily where I don't necessarily think that's a right answer. I haven't quite got the balance of be. And it sounds like you're the opposite. So maybe we should sit on a seesaw and balance each other out. Or you can create some content for me, Kate.
I'm up for that. I think this is where actually, when I became a mum, like social media or Instagram was where I felt very comfortable in extolling my work or whatever, but it was almost a trap. And I think actually it created a lot of isolation and loneliness. And I think when we're running our own businesses and also balancing being a parent, obviously it's not as easy just to get out and meet people. So being online makes a lot of sense. And sometimes it can feel like, and I've definitely fallen into this trap, that we're doing stuff, we're moving the business forwards, when actually we're just spending time and energy, like you say, like we're expending energy every time we open our phone, we're expending energy into it.
Yeah.
And it's like there are many other ways that we can make connections with people in this space as parents, quite specifically, and I think as mums who, probably, whether we like it or not, I've got no science to back this up, but like the mental capacity of motherhood alongside running a business, there is so much other stuff that goes into play, especially if, I think it's different if there's financial stability in other ways in the home. I think that's important to recognise that there's so many different parameters at play here. But that, at the end of the day, like you say, it's got to work for you and it's got to be fun. It's like, actually, if it's going to feel awful, then that's the opposite of the paints, isn't it? That's it's kind of this idea of what is the equivalent of the oil paints that you were given. And there's no right or wrong. And I think we only have so much time, and it's that leverage of it that is what matters.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's about time, and it's kind of, I guess like what you're getting at is, and the journey I've been on and going, it's just how do you get more and more, how can you make more of your days, weeks where you feel in alignment? And so for me, it's really getting rid of the stuff that makes me feel overwhelmed, or, as I say, kind of making sure I've got energy left at the end of the day. But I think we're always on a constant journey of how do we just kind of feel good, feel rested, feel energized in our lives. And it's always like kind of twiddling dials, aren't you?
Yeah, especially
and our kids are always changing, aren't they?
Well, exactly this. Like, this is exactly that. There's this state of almost, and I hate the pressure that some social media puts on this idea of you only have X amount of summers with your children. And I'm like, I still speak to my mum. I'm 40. I'm not worried about there only being 18 summers. That's, all this other stuff that we subconsciously, and this from your work, like the impact of that subconscious consumption, whatever it is. Are you quite, when you consume, whether it is on LinkedIn or, when you're reading things, are you very conscious about what you take in because of your knowledge of the impact of actually all of this on our mood and our energy and our behaviour and our performance in a way?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that I don't consume a lot of daily news, and again, it's like, not that there's a right or wrong answer, but I know I'm very sensitive and take a lot of energy. So I could read a news story and I'd literally just want to lie on the floor the whole day because I'd be so upset and depressed. So it's like that thing of what can I control? How can I make the world better in my little space? That how do I make sure I'm able to do that? And if I can spend half an hour reading the news every day. So I think that's a fun element. And yeah, I just don't spend a lot of time on Instagram. Love reading people's content, or think I don't. I do learn from it. I love reading people's content, but it just takes a lot of energy from me, because then I think also it's because I'm creative. I'm like, oh, I should be doing that, or that's a really good post. Like, oh, I want to do something similar. And then it's like, you've got 10 ideas, and it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do with all of that? Because actually, I've already got a list of 15 things to do. So I just find it overstimulating, to be honest. It's not like I don't enjoy it. It's just really kind of keeping my energy of what do I need to get done and not getting distracted. I think that is why I do it. It's not because I don't enjoy it. I just get distracted of like, oh, well, that's a really good strategy. Or I should be doing that sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's just like it's what's that word? Like not controlling it or editing it, just having a really kind of yeah, just to kind of knowing my limits of what I can take in, so I don't get overwhelmed.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think, I mean, I've definitely been impacted by the news over the last couple of years. And I like you, really had to make a choice of actually, I can't have an impact if I'm actually grief stricken a lot of the time, because I've read something that's now imprinted in my mind,
Yeah.
and I'm having a breakdown, and it's also unleashed other grief. And there's always this balance that we're always all going to have completely different opinions about this. And I think there is this navigation where we get to choose in that bigger picture, like you say, of how can I have that best impact for not only the world, but for my home life, like the world of our homes. And I think this is something that, I don't know if you found this has come up with parents that you've worked with. There is a lot of guilt around the privilege that we have and the safety that we have and in the worlds that we've created. And that almost feeds into negative behaviours or negative choices, and a holding back actually of living freely, because we are so conscious of the privilege that we have. What would you say to someone, or have you ever had that come up with someone where they're like, well, I don't feel like I should be complaining, or I don't feel like I should be finding this hard because other people have it so much harder? And there's a lot of guilt that comes in around people that have lots of things, you know, on paper, but they're struggling emotionally. Do you find that that happens with people that you work with?
Yeah, I don't think that's come up specifically, but I think as um, as a mum, you know, there's just a million and one things that if we let ourselves, we could be, you know, we could feel guilty about. And I think the other thing is that parenting, modern day parenting, is incredibly overwhelming, and there are so many balls to juggle. Um, so I think that it's, I think regardless of the privilege we have, if you are trying to maintain a job and childcare and parenting and all the admin and that sort of thing, it is a lot. You have to be really on your game to kind of manage that and not get overwhelmed by that. So I think it's just recognizing that actually it's not you. Actually, the systems do make it quite hard as well, because you know we weren't really, and I've said this before, that you know the modern nuclear family is, evolutionary speaking, it's incredibly unnatural. Our kids weren't, we weren't supposed to raise kids by two people who had other stuff to do in the day. It's just not kind of, it's not a sensible way to do it. The maths doesn't add up, as we know. So I think it's just recognizing those systems, and that is, I think just even just recognizing that the systems do make it hard, and that actually, evolutionary speaking, this isn't a really natural system. Just can take, I try and really take the pressure of parents as well. And
Yeah,
I make a really conscious, sorry, carry on.
There you go.
Yeah, the last thing I was just going to say is I am really, I think, you know, my mum always worked and had a job she really liked, actually. So when I started working, I was just really conscious of like, I am not doing the mum guilt thing. And I know inside that it's much better for my kids for me to be working. I would be an awful full-time mum. I would be bored by 10 o'clock on a Monday. So I knew it was better for my mental health to be working. And so just which is then better for my kids. So I'm very conscious. I really try and not do the guilt thing. And if it does come up, I try and recognise it and kind of work through it. But I'm not doing the whole feeling guilty all the time. Yeah, and that I guess that sort of feeds into social media as well. Of just, I'm not doing that. Oh, that's perfect, and I can't do that. I'm just not doing it because I just know it's not healthy for me or for them.
Yeah, I think it's so true. And, guilt is such an energy drain. We talk a lot about energy vampires and energy givers, and this cycle of having a happy home and a peaceful home and parenting that is enjoyable. Like, it's all part and parcel of this actual deeper connection with ourselves, isn't it? And this journey, like you say, of self-awareness, of figuring these things out, and it being it can be a very fun and playful and creative endeavor, and it is almost in rebellion to the systems that exist. It is this sense of, I don't have to be this thing, I don't have to feel like that, I don't have to do it this way. Like, what you're saying is really tapping into an individual's unique approach to parenting.
Yeah, and if your parenting is working because we don't know for definite, we never know it's fit. Day to day, are your kids happy and relatively settled? And do you feel good? And are you generally enjoying parenting life? And that's what I help parents with, and why I say I help them find that kind of ease, joy, and give them that alignment, intentionality, because that's what it's about. Like, if you see your kids, it's not about having a perfect Instagram picture. If you saw your kids go for a swim race and actually they talked about their nerves and kind of how they overcame them, or walk up to a party and not know anyone but be okay with that, then you're winning. You're winning at life. It doesn't matter if you haven't got the perfect Instagram picture or you fed them fish fingers 3 days in a row, because next week you can cook something. And just what you've got to, I guess what we're really getting at is, do you feel good in yourself, and can you as a family kind of have a laugh together and kind of enjoy being together? That's what I want to help parents with, and also build these skills for their kids so that they've got that self-awareness and self-knowledge. But that's what it's all about, I think.
I love that. It's so true. I think this whole sense of when we get those tools in place, that's when it feeds into the children as well. It's almost like we're modeling from each other, like you said, this real partnership, this real dance of, we can be inspired by our children just like how they can be inspired by us, without it being a pressure of how it looks. And sometimes, I don't know if you find this, but I sometimes rue my childhood where I'm like, oh, we didn't have phones, we played out in the street. But actually using these moments from our own childhood of what we loved as children as well, to kind of say, actually, there was a lot of peace in that. There was a lot of freedom. There was a lot of presence with family time that perhaps has got squashed and squeezed in this modern day living. And how can we keep some of that alive almost?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where it comes, I say, like, I think values are one of the most underrated tools in parenting, because if you really look at your values, you probably inherited a lot of those from your parents. So they are the invisible legacy we are giving our kids. And so actually, the more we can be conscious of them and let them help us inform our day-to-day decisions and how we want to live our life. Because if your value is kind of presence and connection, then actually you probably shouldn't all be on your phones at the dinner table. So I think, using those to kind of guide you is just so helpful and important.
Before we start to wrap up, I'd love to ask you, because I'm sure people listening that maybe have never worked with a coach, or perhaps, I'd like to be honest, before I started working with a coach, I don't think I was clear on my values. So how would you, what, if you were to give someone like an exercise or an idea of how they can discover their values, what would you say to someone who's like, what do you even mean by values?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think, so I would describe them as almost like Uber beliefs. They're like they are your compass, really. And you probably know them, if you've never thought about them, you probably know them deep inside, because these, really simple one is just looking like a list of values, and they just jump out at you. Like if you have a kind of visceral emotional reaction to them, so like a really common one might be like kindness or respect. if if some if someone does something that is unkind or disrespectful, or even your child, actually, does that kind of make you really angry? Because I think that's the other thing I kind of say to parents, is that often the time it comes into our triggers, the times we get triggered is when our values are being crossed. And it's why I work with couples as well, because actually a lot of triggers or conflict in parenting, individuals in a couple have grown up, not often, but sometimes people have grown up with very different values. So it could be really simple things like, everyone should sit at the table and not leave till they're finished, or one person grew up with a really relaxed sort of family meals, and they're quite happy for their kids to just wander off and that sort of thing. And people can just not realize that actually how you're brought up and your beliefs and values that come from that can really come to the fore. And if you don't make them visible and work through them, they can be the source of like real emotional difficulty and clashing on a day-to-day basis. And that's where that ease and alignment comes from, because actually I'm just helping shine a light to it, and actually it's not that hard to work through. You need to realize it's there and work through it at that ease, because you're not having an argument at every mealtime. And the other thing I'd say, Kate, that I do, which I love doing, is, and I've done with my family, is come up with your values as a family, because again, that is with that, and that can really help you to stay very happy. Because if you said, I have these values, but it means that well, that's very kind, but they do we're going to be fighting together. So they can do a bit of
I love the idea of going through values as a family. And I think this is what we were talking about earlier with freedom and adventure, and this sense of creativity, like all these things that we don't realize sometimes are values. But like you say, those moments that you feel like, oh, that was really great. What's, in the moment lived experiences of those values being like sparkled alive a little bit in a family moment, to then also be like, oh, is there something here that we haven't discovered before? Because I think it's an ever-evolving thing, isn't it? Like we're always discovering, maybe in alignment with how we change as well, this space that we don't have to just choose things and then that's that. It's like this consistent curiosity about what lights us up as a family and as individuals.
Yeah, exactly. And how are you going to know what lights you up as a family? It's a real exploration, isn't it? Because what your kids are capable of at 3 is so different as 6. So then you need to discover what is it that you enjoy doing as a family at age 6. So, example, like me and my husband have always loved traveling. So like adventure is a real family value. And so we went traveling around France over the summer, and we really kind of lived out that value, and it was amazing. Like, the kids loved kind of constantly seeing new places, but that wouldn't have been enjoyable when they were 3 and 6. We wouldn't have wanted to express that. We wouldn't have wanted to kind of act on that value. That would have just been stressful, not enjoyable. And, our holidays were different then, but it was really lovely kind of having that adventure as a family and be able to travel together as a family, and the time was right now. So yeah, as you say, it's just that real kind of learning and evolving. And I think that's the thing no one tells you as parents. It's such an evolution, because they are constantly changing and you're constantly changing, and there can be grief that comes with that, but also I think it's just helping realise that actually you're constantly changing, and you need to kind of revisit what's worked for you as a family is helpful as well. If you realise that, then it can help you kind of work with it.
Yeah, I love that. That makes it really fun. And I think it's such an invaluable thing as well to just live in the moment. That reminder that you've just given us of really living in the moment and understanding that sometimes things will be better in the future. We don't have to do everything now. It just gives this space for, time and pressure of time just feels like it's this constant thing lurking in the background. And that you just even saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, there is so much space for us to actually enjoy this journey in parenting as well.
Yeah, I think that is so true. I think like it's that dial thing, isn't it? Your career, your the time with your time with your kids, kind of your hobbies, your friendships, they're not all going to be at 10. Like so it's just kind of I think getting better at kind of realizing, well, actually I'm just gonna the time of my life at the moment is just family and being at home or whatever, and recognise your change. I think it's so cliched, isn't it? But like that thing of your kids grow up so quickly, because when they're young you feel like, oh, this is it, I'm never going to see my friends again, I'm never going to have time to myself, and you kind of, so you don't enjoy that time with them as much. But I think kind of get better at sort of realising it's just all chapters and we'll get that time back.
Yeah, it's like the whole thing around Instagram, isn't it? And living in the moment. And actually, we don't have to be like, oh my God, it's never going to, this FOMO. Like, it will happen more and more and more. And, I was thinking about it the other day. I saw some photos of me and my daughter when she was just born. I was like, oh, my skin looks so young. And now I'm like, I look all haggard. And I'm like, oh my God, but in 3 years' time, I'm going to be looking back on that next 3 years being like, oh, I look so young 3 years ago. Like, it's this real invitation to like make the most of the now, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
I love to ask this question to everyone that comes on the podcast, and that is, who are you and what are you doing when you're thriving?
Yeah. I think that who am I? I think one thing I really learned about myself from that traveling with the family was I did really struggle not having time to myself. And it was not necessarily a lot of time, but even just half an hour a day. And I realised that I needed that time to kind of process what was happening and almost enjoy it and connect back to myself and kind of find that peace. So I think that really taught me that actually when I'm thriving, I guess it's that like strong connection to self, not just sort of taking in stimuli. So and to give me that kind of peace and joy and creativity as well. So yeah, I guess when I'm thriving is just making sure I've got that time during the day, and then that allows me to kind of connect with people, connect with my kids, connect with friends, be creative in my work. And to feel like I'm thriving.
Micro pockets of time for yourself. I love that, because that's very in the moment as well. That kind of, it's almost like a commitment, isn't it, to not getting lost in everything.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
What would this version of you today give the version of you in the pandemic who is considering all of this? What wisdom would the version of you today give that version of you who is considering the next steps?
I think just to go for it and keep taking one step at a time. I mean, I think I'm proud of myself because actually I feel like I've done that. And there's definitely room for kind of, it's almost like I need to give that advice to myself now, because I think I've spoken to people about this. Like, when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be really visionary and probably a bit impatient, or a go-getter, don't you? And so I'm like, that's a really bad combination, like visionary and impatient. Because you're like, never quite, you're like, well, I've got this really big vision, why isn't it here? So I think really learning to kind of, it's almost like that, what I espouse in parenting, I need to bring that to business. Like, be in the moment, enjoy the journey, take a step at a time.
I
Yeah,
love
so I
that.
think, that's my, I need to give that advice to myself today, as well as the start of
Rather than
the
back in the pandemic. I love that. Thank you so much.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
great wisdom. It's great wisdom, this concept of enjoying the process. And that feeds very nicely into one of my final questions is, what is the vision for Mindset Mummy and Me? Like, that the dream. What is the dream vision that you are creating?
Yeah, so I think that we've talked a lot about the kind of supporting the parents, which is really important for the family system. But I also write books which help. It's kind of giving these foundations to the next generation, isn't it? So I help parents teach kids about emotions, but also what I'm really passionate about is teaching them about how the mind works and mindsets, helping kids understand that they've got some new books coming out. So my mission is really creating a paradigm shift in teaching kids self-knowledge about the power of the mind and the mind-body connection. So I guess the vision is to have those books. They're currently digital and available in my membership, Mindset Now, but I guess have them kind of published and international, really, with families, being used by families and schools across the world to kind of have my thought leadership out there, and then continue to do some of the coaching, but kind of within the system of the materials being out there as well, and that kind of thought leadership and speaking on podcasts. I love, hopefully at some point have my own podcast. And talking to parents and educators.
Wow, I just got like wild goosebumps there because this vision is, I can see it happening. So if you're a literary agent
Oh,
or you're a publisher, because I think we had a bit of a dropout there, but you were talking about your books, and I think there is such a market for this. As a parent, I want to buy those books from Waterstones. You know what I mean? Those are the books I want to buy people for their gifts, for presents. Like, when I go into bookshops, I'm like, what can I get people for a present? Like, those are the kind of books, probably because of also my background and knowing the power of this work. I really see that vision and I support it. And if anyone is listening to help Shilpa bring this to life, then please get in touch. And how can all these wonderful publishers and agents and people who would like support with this work, how can they get in touch with you? What is the best way to find you?
yeah. So we're gonna provide some links, aren't we? So the best way is on my website, and I've got materials, some extracts from my books that they can download. And if they want to get more involved, the link to my memberships there, which is at a really affordable rate of £60 per quarter, where they get fortnightly support and access to all the books and new ones as well. And if they want to join my 3-month coaching program, Aligned, again, details are on the website. They can get in touch.
Amazing. And I'll make sure to link all of that in the show notes. So do definitely go and connect with Shilpa. I can hand on heart support her work. It's helped me a lot. And I think there is so much scope for the impact of this. Like you say, the paradigm shift, which I think is happening, which you will be leading alongside this idea of, the world isn't the same as what it was when we were growing up. And so the best support is to be the change, as Maya Angelou said, be the change that we want to see in the world. Shilpa, before we close, is there anything else you would like to share or impart before we finish up?
No, I don't think so. I've loved this conversation. It's been, just such a lovely conversation. So thank you. And we were talking about a nice ease back into work after feeling a bit rusty after the summer holidays. So thank you so much. I'm so, so pleased to have had this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. And, you know, if you have liked this episode and if it's resonated for you, please share with a parent who you know, because this is how we spread the word of this kind of work. And thank you for listening to the podcast. Do make sure you follow us for any future episodes that come out. And I can't wait to be with you again next week. So Shilpa, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And to the rest of you, have an amazing week and we'll be back online next week. See you later.